I need you to back off right now! Get back in your car! In your car!
Rain slicked the cracked asphalt, washing the city's grime into the gutter. Marcus Hale gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale against the dark leather, his federal badge glinting faintly on the seat beside him. A siren wailed behind, sharp, urgent, wrong. He'd been driving 10 miles under the limit. Blue and red lights swallowed the quiet street. The officer's boots splashed toward his car. License and registration. The man barked, hand already resting on his holster. His name tag read Reynolds. Marcus kept his voice level. Is there a problem, officer? Reynolds' eyes narrowed. Step out of the vehicle. The rain thickened, a steady drumbeat on the roof. Marcus complied, hands visible. People slowed on the sidewalk, watching. Someone raised a phone. Reynolds circled him, jaw clenched. You think that suit makes you better? You think you can drive around here like you own the place? Marcus met his gaze. Calm, contained. Don't give him a reason. Then the words cut through the rain, sharp, deliberate. Men like you don't belong in neighborhoods like this. The silence afterward was deafening. Marcus felt it crawl under his skin, familiar as an old scar. Reynolds reached for his cuffs. Turn around. Marcus's heart hammered once, twice. He raised a hand, slow, measured, and flipped open the leather badge on his belt. Federal Marshal. Reynolds froze. For a heartbeat, only the rain moved. Then Marcus said quietly, you might want to rethink your next move, officer. And the siren wailed again, louder, closer, as 2 more patrol cars turned the corner. The rain hadn't stopped since dawn. Water streaked across Marcus Hale's windshield, city lights blurring into gold and red veins through the storm. His wipers struggled against the downpour as he turned onto Ashfield Avenue, a quiet stretch lined with shuttered storefronts and flickering neon signs. Then the siren came, sharp, sudden dot. He glanced in the mirror, blue lights flashing behind him, slicing through the wet night. He slowed, pulled to the curb, exhaled. When the officer approached, boots splashing in the gutter, Marcus lowered his window halfway. The man's flashlight swept across his face before resting on the badge clipped to the seatbelt. License and registration. Marcus handed them over. Evening, officer. Is there a problem? Reynolds' lips twisted. You were drifting between lanes. Marcus's brow furrowed. The roads flooded. I adjusted for the step out of the vehicle. Marcus hesitated. The tone wasn't procedural. It was personal. He opened the door, stepped into the cold rain. It soaked his suit instantly. Hands on the hood. Excuse me, you heard me. A small crowd had gathered. A woman held up her phone, recording silently beneath her umbrella. Reynolds moved in close. The metallic smell of wet leather and sweat between them. You think wearing a suit makes you untouchable? Marcus stared straight ahead. I think professionalism should. Reynolds scoffed. Don't get smart. Guys like you always think you're the exception. Marcus's jaw tightened. Guys like me. Reynolds grinned, the kind of grin that fed off power. Yeah, the ones who forget their place. Marcus turned his head, slow, deliberate. What place is that, exactly? The officer's hand brushed his holster. Careful how you talk to me. The silence was heavier than the rain. Officer, Marcus said evenly, you're making a mistake. Reynolds leaned closer. You think you can threaten me? Marcus didn't move, didn't blink, just reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Don't you? He froze as Marcus withdrew the black leather wallet and flipped it open, the gleam of the gold badge unmistakable even through the rain. United States Federal Marshal, the crowd murmured. The woman's camera phone zoomed in. Reynolds stepped back, color draining from his face. Yes, Marcus said quietly, and you've already gone too far. Another patrol car screeched to a stop behind them, lights slicing through the rain. Marcus didn't flinch. He stood in the storm, badge in one hand, humiliation burning behind calm eyes. Now, he said, voice low and steady, call your supervisor. The rain kept falling. Reynolds didn't move. The moment stretched thin as wire, the balance of power shifting, one silent inch at a time. And somewhere in the distance, another siren rose, cutting through the dark like judgment. The morning after the storm, Marcus Hale walked through the sterile corridors of the police headquarters, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucracy. His suit was pressed, his expression unreadable, but exhaustion lingered beneath the surface. He'd spent half the night drafting the report, every word careful, Every sentence a calculation between truth and survival. The clerk at the front desk looked up, recognition flickering in her eyes. Marshal Hale, Internal Affairs, is expecting you. Marcus nodded, his badge clipped to his belt. Thank you. The elevator doors slid open with a dull chime. He stepped in alone, staring at the reflection of his own calm face in the stainless steel. It wasn't anger that fueled him anymore, it was precision. When he entered the conference room, 3 men in gray suits waited around a long glass table. A single folder sat at the center. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Marshal Hale, one said, not rising. Please, have a seat. Marcus sat. Let's start with your statement. The man continued. You're alleging that Officer Reynolds engaged in racial profiling and misconduct during a routine traffic stop. Marcus's tone was measured. Not alleging, stating. A pause. Pen scratched paper. The second investigator, heavier set, with a gold watch, leaned forward. You're aware, Marshal, that Officer Reynolds claims you refused to comply. I complied, Marcus said evenly. He escalated without cause. The third man adjusted his glasses. Body cam footage shows tension. Raised voices. Raised voices don't justify abuse of power. The gold watch man scribbled something. Marshal, you know how these things look from the outside. A misunderstanding. Maybe Marcus's voice cut in, calm but sharp. Misunderstanding doesn't explain why his hand was on his gun before he even asked for my license. Silence. The first investigator cleared his throat. We'll review the footage in full. For now, we advise against public comment. Marcus gave a dry laugh. Public comment? I haven't said a word. The video's already online. That made them look up. The bystander uploaded it. Marcus said, clip. Out of context. I've been called a thug, a fraud, and worse since sunrise. The man with the glasses sighed. Social media isn't evidence. No, Marcus said quietly, but it shapes truth faster than the law ever does. The meeting ended without eye contact. They thanked him for his cooperation. The word felt hollow. Outside, the hallway buzzed with officers moving between desks. Conversations lowered as he passed. He caught the fragments. That's him, the one from the video. He kept walking in the parking lot. Rainwater still pooled in uneven patches of asphalt. He paused beside his car, staring at the faint scratch marks left from the night before. A familiar voice called out. Marcus. Agent Claire Jennings, Internal Affairs Liaison, approached, folder in hand. She looked tired but resolute. They're not going to act quickly, she said. Reynolds has backing, union lawyers, politics. I figured they'll stall until it fades from the news cycle. Marcus met her eyes. Then I'll make sure it doesn't fade. She hesitated. You're walking a fine line. They don't like it when one of their own shines a light. I'm not one of theirs, Marcus said. Not anymore. He got into his car, rain beginning again, softer this time. That evening, his apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the soft buzz of the TV left on mute. He sat at his kitchen table, reviewing his report again, though he'd memorized every word. A framed photo sat on the counter, his father in uniform, a city cop from another era. The old man's smile was proud, unbroken by what the world had shown him. Marcus whispered to the photo, "You told me to believe in the badge." He turned the frame face down. The television screen flickered with breaking news. The anchor's voice broke through. New footage has surfaced of an alleged confrontation between a federal officer and a local policeman. Marcus turned up the volume. The clip played, grainy, distorted, cut right after Reynolds said men like you don't belong here. The edit made it look mutual to men clashing, not one man enduring. The anchor continued. Officials say an internal review is underway. The names have not been confirmed. Marcus exhaled slowly. They're protecting him. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet, Marshal. He stared at the text. No sender name, no signature, just the threat, clean and efficient. He deleted it. Then he opened his laptop, began typing again. Not a report this time, but a record. Dates, times, interactions. He documented everything. If the system wanted silence, he'd give them evidence instead. Thunder rolled outside, distant but growing. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The rain tapped against the window like an unending reminder. The storm wasn't over. It had only moved inside the walls. The morning news blared across every screen in the city. Marcus Hale's face filled the frame, grainy mid-motion, caught between raindrops and blue lights. The headline crawled beneath it. Federal Marshal under fire after aggressive Confrontation with police officer. Marcus watched from his office, motionless, his reflection ghosted over the image of himself on the screen. The same man, but cut apart, misrepresented, weaponized. The edited footage played again. Reynolds' demand, Marcus's raised hands, the clipped exchange that made him look confrontational. The anchor's voice was smooth, detached. Sources inside the department claimed the officer followed standard protocol. However, questions remain about the marshal's behavior. Marcus muted the TV. His phone vibrated with messages, some from colleagues, "Hang in there, man," others colder, "Not a good look for you." One, from his superior, "Marcus, come to my office, now." The director's office overlooked the Capitol skyline, heavy wood paneling, rows of awards, the air thick with authority. "Sit down," Director Lawson said. Marcus obeyed. Lawson didn't look up from the report. "You're all over the news, I noticed. You know how this works. The department's reputation is at stake. We can't let this spiral. It's already spiraling because someone edited that footage." Lawson exhaled. "Even so, perception matters more than fact. You need to stay off the record. Don't comment, don't post, don't give interviews." And Reynolds, "He's being reviewed internally." "That means nothing." "Marcus," Lawson said sharply, "you're too close to this. Let the process play out." Marcus leaned forward. "The process is designed to protect men like him. You know that." The silence that followed was an answer. Lawson's gaze softened slightly. "You've done good work. Don't throw it away on one bad night." "One bad night," Marcus repeated, voice low. "That man humiliated me at gunpoint in public. The only reason I'm still standing here is because of what's on this badge." Lawson didn't respond. Marcus rose. "If you're not going to fix it, I will." In the hallway, whispers followed him like smoke. A pair of junior agents went silent as he passed. One muttered after he turned the corner, "He brought it on himself." Marcus stopped walking. For a second, he wanted to turn back, confront them, demand respect. Instead, he kept going. Words wouldn't change minds, built on bias. At his desk, a stack of printed comments from online angry black men, abusing power, thinks he's above the law. Each line chipped away at something unseen but heavy. He scrolled through the video's comment section, thousands of shares, hundreds of hate messages, a few defenders drowned under noise. He clicked one profile, a local reporter who'd tweeted, "Federal Marshal involved in altercation. Sources suggest attitude problem." He called the number listed in her bio. "Jessica Grant," she answered, crisp, practiced. "This is Marshal Marcus Hale," he said. "You posted a story based on false footage." Pause. Then, "Marshal Hale, you're the man from the video." "I am, and you left out context." "I only reported what was provided by the department." "So you ran their version." "I ran the official version." Marcus's tone hardened. "The official version is a lie. Do you have proof?" The question hung. He didn't answer. "Not yet." "Then you should probably avoid calling reporters," she said, and hung up. Marcus stared at the phone. The quiet afterward was louder than the conversation itself. That night, he drove to the city's east side. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened under flickering lights. He parked outside a diner still open past midnight. Inside, the few patrons looked up briefly, then returned to their meals. A familiar voice called from the counter. "You look like hell." A detective, Eric Dawson, old friend, local cop, slid him a cup of black coffee. "Appreciate the honesty," Marcus said. "You're making enemies in high places. I'm used to it. Not like this, you're not." Marcus sipped. "You think I should let it go too?" Dawson studied him. "I think you're right, but being right won't save your career." Marcus set the cup down. "What if I don't care about saving it?" "Then you better have a plan." "I do." Dawson's brow lifted. "And what's that?" "Truth," Marcus said simply. Dawson shook his head. "Truth's expensive, brother. Costs more than you think." Marcus's gaze hardened. "Then I'll pay." They sat in silence, the hum of the neon sign outside pulsing red against the window. When Marcus finally stood to leave, Dawson asked, "You sure you're ready for the fallout?" Marcus paused at the door. "Fallout's already here." He stepped into the cold night, the city stretching before him, half lit, half asleep, wholly complicit. The next morning, Marcus Hale woke to a single email that changed everything. Subject: "You didn't get this from me." Attachment: bodycam _full_ unedited.mp for no sender name, no traceable signature, just the file. He stared at it for a long time before clicking. The video began with the sharp sound of rain, boots on asphalt. Reynolds' voice, clear, unedited, venomous, filled the speakers. Every word Marcus remembered was there. The slur, the tone, the threat. Then came the silence, the part the news had cut, where Marcus revealed his badge and said, "You might want to rethink your next move." The footage didn't end there. It captured the look on Reynolds' face. Panic, fear, the sudden awareness of exposure. Marcus sat back, eyes fixed on the screen. Proof. Finally, proof. He replayed it twice, making sure the timestamp matched his report. The integrity markers were intact. Whoever leaked it knew what they were doing. He plugged in a flash drive and copied the file. Then he opened his encrypted drive, creating 3 backups. Experience had taught him truth needed protection from more than lies. It needed protection from deletion. By noon, he was in Claire Jennings' office. She looked pale when he showed her the file. "Marcus," she whispered, "do you know what this means?" "It means they buried evidence." "Or," she said carefully, "it means someone inside wanted this out. But if you go public, you're burning every bridge you've got left." Marcus folded his arms. The bridges led nowhere. She shut her eyes briefly. "Reynolds' captain will shut this down before it surfaces. They'll claim it's manipulated. That's why I need to move first. Think about what you're risking." He met her gaze. "I've thought about it every night since he put his hand on his gun." Claire's silence was answer enough. "Then, at least be smart about it," she said finally. "If you leak it, do it right. No fingerprints, no direct ties." "I know a reporter," Marcus said. "Someone you can trust." He paused. "I'll find out." That evening, he parked outside a narrow brick building, the local newspaper's headquarters. Inside, the lights glowed low and yellow through the blinds. He waited until most of the staff had left before walking in. Jessica Grant, the same reporter who'd dismissed him days earlier, looked up from her desk. "Marshal Hale," she said slowly, "didn't expect to see you again." "You wanted proof," Marcus said, setting the flash drive on her desk. "There it is." She frowned. "What's this?" "The full body cam video, unedited." She stared at it. "If this is what you say it is, you realize you're handing me dynamite." "I'm aware." She leaned back. "Why me?" "Because you already printed their version. You should want the truth more than anyone." Jessica hesitated, then inserted the drive into her laptop. The room filled with the same rain-soaked audio, Reynolds' voice, the slur, the threat. When the footage ended, she sat still for a long moment. "Holy hell," she murmured. This could tear the department open." Marcus said nothing. She looked up. "You sure you want to do this? Once it's out, it's out. No coming back. Just publish the truth." Jessica nodded slowly. "I'll verify it. If it's authentic, it'll go live tonight." He turned to leave. "Marshal," she called after him, "when this breaks, they won't just come for Reynolds." Marcus didn't turn around. "They already came for me." By midnight, the story hit every major outlet. Full body cam footage reveals racial abuse by officer in high-profile case. The clip spread faster than fire. Hashtags trended. Commentators reversed their tone. Reynolds' name, previously protected, leaked within hours. The department released a brief statement. "We are aware of the unauthorized publication of sensitive material. An investigation is ongoing." Marcus sat alone in his apartment, lights off, laptop screen casting cold light across his face. His phone vibrated nonstop. Reporters, unknown numbers, threats, praise. He ignored them all. At 2 a.m., a message flashed on his screen. "Unknown number again. You shouldn't have done that." Then, a second text. "You think this ends with him?" Marcus locked the phone, jaw tightening. He moved to the window. Across the street, a black sedan idled under a flickering street. No plates, windows tinted. He watched for a full minute. The car didn't move. The truth was out, but so was he. He turned off the lights. The room fell into shadow. Outside, the engine rumbled softly, waiting. Marcus whispered to the darkness, "Let them come." The rain began again, faint, relentless, as if the storm itself refused to let him rest. The next few days blurred into one long stretch of silence and noise, the city roaring with outrage, while Marcus Hale's apartment stayed still. The video had detonated like a grenade. Cable news ran it hourly. Commentators debated everything but the truth, procedure, tone, interpretation. The police union called the leak reckless. Reynolds was placed on temporary leave, not suspension. Marcus hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, the rain returned, the siren, the gun, the voice saying, "Men like you don't belong here." It started small. A car parked across the street. Same model, same time, 3 nights in a row. Then the phone calls dead air, always between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m. By the 4th night, Marcus stopped picking up. He kept the lights off, moving through the dark like a man used to His martial instincts were sharper than fear. Fear was useless without focus. A knock came at the door. 3 short raps. Precise. He slid his hand toward the Glock on the table, then checked the PEEPHOLE. Claire Jennings. He opened the door a few inches. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same. She stepped inside, dropping a folder on his table. Her eyes darted toward the window, scanning for movement outside. Your leak worked, she said. Internal affairs is in free fall. Half the department's in panic mode, and the other half rallying around Reynolds. They're painting him as the victim of a political hit job. Marcus rubbed his jaw. Of course they are. She hesitated. You've got people watching you, Marcus. Not officially. Unmarked cars. I've seen them near your building. I know. You need to lay low. I don't hide. This isn't about pride, she snapped. You humiliated them. They'll come after you in ways that don't leave bruises. Marcus looked at her, exhaustion in his eyes, but also clarity. Then, I'll keep receipts. She sighed, sitting down. You always were stubborn. Persistence, he corrected. Stubborn is what they call it when it makes them uncomfortable. A silence settled, heavy, fragile. Then Claire opened the folder. This came across my desk this morning. Reynolds has a record, 3 prior complaints for racial profiling, all dismissed. Guess who signed the dismissals? Marcus scanned the document. Captain Foxo. Exactly. And he's the one trying to bury this. Marcus leaned back. So it's not just one bad cop. It's a system cleaning its own fingerprints. Pretty much. He closed the folder. Send me copies. Already did. Encrypted. They sat in the quiet for a long time, only the hum of the refrigerator between them. Finally, Claire said softly, You know this could ruin your career. Marcus looked up. They already tried that. Now it's my turn. The next morning, his phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a call. It was a photo. A shot of his car, taken from across the street. Attached was a message. Still think you're safe. He stared at it for a long second before forwarding it to Claire. Her reply came instantly. Get out of your apartment now. Marcus packed light, a duffel with essentials, badge, service weapon, laptop. He left through the back entrance, cutting across alleys until he reached his car parked 2 blocks away. As he pulled onto the road, the black sedan reappeared in the rearview mirror. He didn't speed up, just drove. Predictable. When he turned off onto the freeway, the sedan followed for exactly 10 miles, then peeled away without a signal. Message received. Evening, Marcus met Dawson at an old parking structure downtown. The place was half collapsed, graffiti covered, and safe from casual eyes. You're on every news feed, Dawson said. They're calling you a liability. Disruptive influence. Marcus smirked. They finally got my title right. Dawson's expression darkened. This goes deeper than Reynolds. The leak embarrassed people, high up state officials, maybe feds. They'll start pushing back. Then I'll push harder. Marcus, he cut him off. You know what happens if I back down now. Every kid who looks like me learns that truth doesn't matter, that silence is survival. Dawson nodded slowly. You're playing a dangerous game. Not a game, Marcus said. A reckoning. He turned to leave, the night air cold against his skin. Marcus, Dawson called out. What if they come after you personally? Marcus stopped. Then I make sure it's recorded. At 3 a.m., a new message came in, a video this time, grainy, from a phone camera. Someone filming his apartment door from the hallway. A man's voice whispered behind the lens. Sleep tight, Marshal. The video ended there. Marcus exhaled through his nose, steady and silent. Then, he turned on his recorder, mounted it near the door, and sat down with his badge in front of him. The rules had changed. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was inside the walls, inside the system, inside every silent face that pretended not to see. And Marcus Hale wasn't done fighting, not even close. The morning after the threats, Marcus Hale sat in his car overlooking the city skyline. The air was sharp, gray, unmoving. Beneath the calm, he could feel it, tension ready to crack. His phone buzzed with notifications, each one feeding the chaos. The story had reached national media. Hashtags multiplied. Protesters marched outside the precinct. Placards read Justice for Howell. and end the blue wall. Inside his encrypted inbox was a single message from Jessica Grant, the reporter who'd broken the footage story. It's happening. Multiple sources confirm more internal tapes exist. Reynolds isn't the only one. They're scrambling. You were right. Marcus stared at the screen, jaw tightening. The truth was finally breathing, but not without consequence. By noon, Claire Jennings met him in a quiet cafe on the city's south side. They took a corner booth, away from cameras, whispers, and eyes. You've started a wildfire, she said. I didn't start it, Marcus replied. I just stopped pretending it wasn't burning. She slid him a folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, times, each one linked Reynolds' captain, Farlow, 2 tampered reports and deleted complaints. Claire said quietly, they're covering their tracks, but not fast enough. There's a full-blown cleanup operation happening. Someone's purging evidence. Marcus flipped through the papers. How much can we prove? Enough to make the department sweat. Not enough for court. Yet. Then we make it public. Marcus, he looked up. The system only listens when it's cornered. She leaned closer. You've already been threatened. You leak again, they'll frame you for obstruction, or worse. Marcus's gaze didn't waver. Then they'll have to prove it. Claire exhaled, pressing a hand against her temple. You're going to get yourself destroyed. Marcus's tone hardened. No, I'm going to get Reynolds destroyed, and the people who kept him in uniform. That evening, he drove to Jessica Grant's apartment. She opened the door, pale and exhausted, clutching a mug of coffee. You didn't tell me you were sending more. Marcus held up a flash drive. New evidence. Keep it safe. Encrypt it. Post it if anything happens to me. Her eyes widened. Don't say that. I don't deal in chances, Ms. Grant. Only contingencies. She hesitated, then nodded. I've already been getting calls, anonymous, telling me to drop the story. Then you're on the right track. She looked at him, really looked at him, as if seeing the wear in his eyes, the lines forming from too many sleepless nights. What drives you, Marshal? Is it justice or revenge? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He took a breath. Justice is supposed to heal. Revenge only burns. I'm just making sure the fire lands where it should. Jessica studied him. I'll publish, but once this is out, you'll be untouchable or erased. Then I better move fast. The story went live at 10:47 p.m. New leak. Systemic cover-up inside police department, minus captain, accused of suppressing racial complaints. The reaction was instant. News anchors called it the most explosive exposé of the decade. Protesters grew louder. Politicians issued cautious statements about reviewing procedures. By dawn, the precinct's entrance was surrounded by flashing cameras and barricades. Reynolds' name was trending again, this time alongside Farlow's. Marcus watched it unfold from his apartment. Every network, every feed, every word. The truth was no longer confined to reports and paper trails. It was living, spreading, undeniable. His phone rang. Claire, you did it, she said. They've suspended EAA's reopening every closed complaint from the last 5 years. Marcus's voice was flat. Suspended isn't justice. It's a start. You lit the fuse. He turned toward the window, watching distant sirens flicker across the skyline. A fuse still burns both ways. By afternoon, his inbox overflowed. News requests, interview offers, strangers calling him a hero. He ignored them all. Then, amid the noise, another message appeared. No sender ID, just text. You don't know who you're dealing with. He closed the email. No response. No fear. Moments later, the power in his apartment cut out. The hum of electronics died. The room fell silent. Marcus stood, scanning the shadows, instincts kicking in. He reached for his weapon, then his phone, dead. He moved to the window. Across the street, 2 silhouettes in dark coats watched from the sidewalk. Not cops, not press, professionals. Marcus backed away from the glass. The knock came slow, deliberate. He stayed silent. Another knock, louder. Then a voice. Marshal Hale, we just want to talk. Marcus gripped the gun tighter, heart steady. You're late. The doorknob twisted once, tested, then, footsteps receded down the hall. He waited. 5 minutes, 10. Silence returned. The power flickered back on. The apartment hummed again, as if nothing had happened. But Marcus knew better. The exposure had consequences. Truth had teeth, and the people it bit would bite back. He sat down, breathing slow, pulling his badge closer. Its shine caught the dim light. Once a symbol, now a weapon. He whispered under his breath, almost to himself. Now you know my name. Outside, somewhere beyond the glass. The city kept roaring, furious, divided, awake. And Marcus Hale was no longer a target. He was a warning. The courthouse smelled of disinfectant and tension. Cameras lined the marble steps, reporters shouting questions that no one answered. Inside, the air was colder, quieter, the kind of silence that hummed before something irreversible. Marcus Hale sat behind the prosecution table, posture controlled, expression unreadable. Across the room, Officer Reynolds adjusted his tie, eyes darting, jaw working. He was no longer in uniform, just another defendant in a cheap gray suit. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Case number 21 to 894. The People versus Officer Samuel Reynolds. Charges: aggravated assault, misconduct under color of authority, falsification of evidence. Reynolds' lawyer, Dorsey, leaned in and whispered something, but Marcus caught the smirk that followed. The arrogance was still there, dented, not gone. Claire Jennings took her seat beside Marcus. She whispered, "He's nervous. Keep it that way." Marcus didn't respond. He watched Reynolds' every blink, every twitch. The prosecutor began. On March 14th, Officer Reynolds conducted an illegal stop that resulted in the assault of an unarmed civilian, who was later identified as Federer. Marshal Marcus Hale. We will demonstrate the defendant's abuse of power and his pattern of racial profiling. The courtroom murmured. The words hung like smoke. Dorsey stood. Objection. My client was unaware of the complainant's federal status. He acted within his authority, given the circumstances. The judge nodded. Overruled for now. Proceed. The first video clip played. Grainy, body cam footage, streetlights flickering, Reynolds' voice, harsh, commanding. Marcus, standing calm, hands visible. Then the shove, the ground, the cuffs. Marcus forced himself to watch. The memory burned as fresh as the night itself. The prosecutor paused the footage at Reynolds' sneer. You think your badge makes you untouchable. The silence that followed was electric. A reporter's pen stopped mid-scratch. Marcus felt his throat tighten, not from shame, but from fury at how familiar that look had become when it was his turn to testify. The courtroom seemed to tilt. State your name and occupation. Marcus Hale, U.S. Marshal, Federal Fugitive Task Force. He sat straight, eyes forward. Mr. Hale, describe what happened on the night in question. He took a breath. I was driving home from a conference. Unmarked car, standard issue badge on the dash. I noticed a patrol car tailing me for several blocks. Then the lights flashed. And then, Reynolds approached with his hand already on his weapon. Asked me where I stole the car. A ripple passed through the gallery. Marcus continued, voice low, deliberate. I identified myself, showed credentials. He didn't look. He called me boy. Told me to step out, keep my hands where he could see them. I complied. He cuffed me anyway. The prosecutor leaned closer. Did you resist? Marcus looked directly at Reynolds. No, but he needed me to. Dorsey stood abruptly. Speculation. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Marcus didn't blink. He slammed me against the hood. Said, let's see how Federer you really are. That's when I knew it wasn't about law enforcement. It was about power. The words hung heavy and final. During cross-examination, Dorsey tried to chip away. You claim my client's actions were racially motivated. Do you have proof of intent? Marcus's tone stayed even. His intent was clear. His words were the proof. Dorsey smirked. Words can be misheard. Marcus leaned forward slightly. So can screams. The room froze. Even the judge hesitated before saying, next question. When the defense called Reynolds to the stand, his confidence cracked under the weight of his own contradictions. I didn't know who he was, Reynolds insisted. It was dark. I followed procedure. Procedure doesn't include slamming a compliant suspect, the prosecutor said. Reynolds' tone sharpened. He looked suspicious. No ID visible. No backup. Marcus watched, silent. Claire leaned over. He's unraveling. The prosecutor pressed harder. Did you call him boy? Reynolds hesitated. I don't recall. Would you say that to a white driver? Silence. The prosecutor stepped closer. Answer the question, officer. Reynolds' jaw flexed. No. The courtroom exhaled as one. The truth, raw and undeniable, finally said aloud, when closing statements came. The prosecutor's voice was steady, merciless. This is not about a traffic stop. This is about a system that protects authority at the expense of humanity. Officer Reynolds didn't see a citizen that night. He saw a color, and the badge became his weapon. Dorsey countered, citing stress, policy, human error. but even he sounded hollow, his arguments collapsing under the weight of evidence. The jury left. Hours passed like years. Marcus waited in the hallway, staring at the tiled floor, hands clasped. Claire sat beside him, her voice barely a whisper. No matter what happens, you changed something. He didn't answer. Change wasn't enough. Accountability was. The doors opened. The jury filed in. The forewoman stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Samuel Reynolds, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, cries, applause breaking through protocol. Reynolds slumped in his chair, pale and shaking. Marcus didn't move. He just watched. Quietly. Claire whispered, "It's over." Marcus finally spoke. "No, it's documented." Outside, the crowd waited. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters surged forward, shouting his name. Marshal Hale. "How does it feel to win?" He looked into the blinding lights. "It's not a win," he said. "It's a start." The cameras clicked faster, but Marcus had already turned away. The courthouse steps stretched ahead, each one heavy, with ghosts of names, faces, stories that never reached a courtroom. He walked down slowly, the sound of justice, imperfect, delayed, but alive, echoing behind him. The night air carried the hum of helicopters. Downtown was locked in a strange quiet, not peace, but aftermath. Marcus Hale stood outside the courthouse, the floodlights dimming as crews packed their cameras. The verdict had spread across every major network. Social media burned with celebration, rage, vindication. But behind the noise, something heavier pulsed, the weight of what comes after justice. He adjusted his tie and stepped into the cool street. Every step felt slower, like the city itself had shifted. Claire Jennings caught up beside him, coat wrapped tight. "They're saying the mayor's ordering a full department audit. Reynolds is done. Farlow too. Maybe others." Marcus kept walking. "Audits won't change culture." Claire sighed. "You really can't take a win, can you?" He stopped. "You call this a win? One conviction after decades of silence. Justice isn't arithmetic, Claire. It's memory." Her expression softened. "Then let them remember." By morning, the precinct was surrounded. Reporters swarmed. Uniforms streamed in and out like a hive hit by smoke. Inside, Captain Farlow was packing his office, face drawn and gray. He looked up when Marcus appeared in the doorway. "You shouldn't be here," Farlow said. "I've got clearance," Marcus replied, tone flat. "Federal follow-up." Farlow dropped a file into a box. "You made your point, Marshal. Reynolds is paying for his mistakes, but you went too far." Marcus stepped closer. "Too far is when a man uses his badge to choke a city. What I did was correction." Farlow's voice rose. "You embarrassed this department. You dragged us through the mud." Marcus stared at him. "You handed us the shovel." For a moment, silence. Then Farlow laughed, low, bitter. "You think one trial changes anything? You'll see. They'll replace Reynolds with another Reynolds, and the world keeps spinning." Marcus leaned in, his tone cold. "Maybe. But now every badge knows there's a camera waiting. That's how systems break, inch by inch." Farlow looked down, jaw locked, saying nothing. Marcus turned and walked out. Later that afternoon, the department's press conference filled every screen. The chief stood before a wall of microphones, voice steady but strained. "Effective immediately, Officer Samuel Reynolds has been terminated. Captain Farlow is on indefinite suspension pending federal review. The department will cooperate fully with all oversight measures." Reporters shouted questions. "Do you acknowledge racial bias within the department?" The chief hesitated too long. Then, "We acknowledge there is work to be done." Marcus watched from his apartment. His phone buzzed. Messages from strangers, old colleagues, even a senator's office. All praise. None of it mattered. He muted the screen and sat back. On his table lay the same badge that started it all. He picked it up, turning it in his hand. The metal glinted in the fading light. He remembered the first day he earned it. The pride, the weight, the belief that it meant something. INCORRUPTIBLE. Now, it felt like evidence. A knock on the door. He opened it to find Jessica Grant weary, smiling faintly. "You vanished," she said. "I needed quiet." She stepped inside, setting a file on his counter. "You should know, Internal Affairs found more, not just Reynolds or training officers, supervisors. It's wider than anyone thought." Marcus didn't react. "It always was." She studied him. "You're not surprised?" "No." "Then what now?" He looked at her. "Now I do my job, quietly, Permanently. Jessica nodded slowly. You could take a desk, you know. Step back, right? People are calling you a symbol. He almost smiled. Symbols don't last. Actions do. 2 days later, a televised address, the U.S. Attorney General announced the formation of a task force to investigate systemic misconduct across multiple departments. Marcus Hale's testimony cited as instrumental. The camera showed his face for half a second, calm, detached, unreadable. Across the country, citizens watched. Some felt hope, others anger, but the silence between both emotions was the same. A reckoning had begun, whether they wanted it or not. That night, Marcus drove back to the street where it all started. The same cracked pavement, the same flickering streetlight. He parked, stepped out, and stood in the quiet. Wind moved through the alley, carrying echoes of that night. The command, the cuffs, the asphalt against his skin. He whispered, "You almost won." He placed the badge on the curb. It gleamed under the streetlight, an emblem of power and pain. Then he turned and walked away, leaving it behind. No speeches, no applause, just the sound of his footsteps fading into the dark. The next morning, a boy walking to school found the badge. He picked it up, eyes wide, tracing the engraved words, United States Marshal. He didn't know whose it was, or what it had cost, but he slipped it into his pocket anyway. The metal cold against his palm, a fragment of truth passed forward. Marcus Hale never returned to the department. He transferred quietly to another division, out of the spotlight, but every case he touched after that carried his mark, quiet precision, zero tolerance, no shortcuts. And when officers whispered his name, it wasn't fear, it was warning. Because somewhere in that city, under a streetlight that never stopped flickering, a single badge lay etched into memory, proof that even justice, once silent, could learn to speak. Morning light bled across the blinds, soft and indifferent. Marcus Hale sat at his kitchen table, coffee untouched, a news segment murmuring from the TV. The Justice Department has confirmed multiple indictments following the Reynolds investigation. Experts call it a turning point in federal oversight. He muted the sound. The words meant nothing now. Headlines were ceremony fireworks after the war. His apartment was bare, stripped of most reminders. The case files were gone, the evidence drives secured. What remained were small ghosts, a cracked mug from the task force, the jacket he wore that night, and the thin scar on his wrist that hadn't fully faded. He traced it absently, a memory etched beneath the skin. The cost wasn't physical, it was quieter. Lonelier. He hadn't spoken to Claire in weeks. Jessica's messages went unanswered. He didn't attend the ceremonies or panels or interviews. Every invitation read the same, tell your story. But stories had weight, and he'd carried enough. That afternoon, he drove south, out past the city limits. The skyline shrank behind him, a cluster of glass and gilt. He reached the small community center where it had all begun, the outreach program he'd once volunteered at before the chaos. Inside, a youth basketball game echoed through the gym, laughter, energy, life untouched by courtrooms. A boy recognized him. "Hey, you're that Marshal from TV, right?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Used to be. You were the guy who took down that bad cop." Marcus crouched slightly, meeting his eyes. "I didn't take him down. I told the truth. The system took him down after it finally listened." The boy frowned. "You gonna stop bad guys now?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Always." The boy grinned and ran back to his game. Marcus stood there, letting the noise fill the silence that had followed him for months. Later, in the director's office, Claire Jennings waited. She looked older, tired, but alive. "You found me," Marcus said. "Didn't have to look far. You're not hard to track, you know." He sat. "You still working with the task force?" "Until they replace me," she said. "We're building new oversight units. It's slow, but it's real." "Good." She studied him for a long moment. "You could have been leading it. They wanted you." He shook his head. "I didn't want a desk. I just wanted quiet." "Quiet doesn't change anything." "It does if it comes after the storm." She leaned forward. "You're running from what you built." He met her eyes. "No, I'm letting it breathe." For the first time, she smiled, not in triumph, but understanding. "You always did have a strange idea of peace." "Peace isn't absence," he said. "It's recovery." Weeks passed. The news cycle moved on. Other stories rose. New scandals, new names. Reynolds filed an appeal. It was denied. Farlow resigned quietly. The city announced reforms. People celebrated, protested, argued, the cycle continued. Marcus kept working, low-profile assignments, quiet investigations, no cameras, no press. At night, he walked the same streets where it began, unseen. The same corners where lights once flashed, now calm. He didn't hate Reynolds anymore. Hate was easy. Understanding was harder. The man wasn't the disease, just one symptom of something deeper, older, systemic. Marcus had fought one infection. The body still ached, but at least now, it was aware. One evening, Jessica found him again. "I wrote the book," she said, handing him a copy. Under the badge, "The Hale Investigation." He didn't touch it. "You didn't need my permission. I wanted your truth." He looked at her. "Truth isn't mine to give, it's everyone's to face." She smiled faintly. "You really think this changes anything?" "No," he said, "but it reminds them that change exists. That's enough." She nodded slowly. "You know, I thought you'd be angrier." "I was," Marcus said. "Anger started it, but anger doesn't finish things." She tilted her head. "So what does—" He looked out the window, watching the city lights flicker against the night. Persistence. Months later, Marcus stood before a new class of recruits, young marshals, eager and uncertain. He wasn't scheduled to speak. He'd just stopped by, but the instructor gestured toward him. "Marshal Hale, any words for the next generation?" Marcus paused, eyes moving across the room. "Your badge doesn't make you the law," he said. "It reminds you that you serve it. And when you forget that, when you start believing power is protection, that's when justice dies. Don't let it." The room was silent. He turned and left without another word. Outside, night again, rain beginning to fall. He walked slowly, coat collar raised, passing under the same gray sky that had watched everything unfold. For the first time in years, he didn't feel watched back. He reached his car, opened the door, and paused, glancing once at the small scar on his wrist. The memory was still there, but it no longer owned him. He got in, started the engine, and drove into the dark, not escaping, continuing, because justice wasn't an ending. It was a habit. And Marcus Hale had learned to live with the cost. 3 years later, the city looked different. Not healed, not pure, but different. The department had new leadership. Community boards held open reviews. Cameras were everywhere, and silence was harder to buy. Marcus Hale hadn't been back in months. His hair was grayer, his gait slower, but his eyes still steady, still sharp, scanned everything. He'd been transferred twice, kept his distance from the noise, but every time the news broke another story of reform, or another fall from grace, his name surfaced like a ghost in the credits. He arrived at the precinct that morning quietly, no badge displayed, no escort, just another man walking into the same building where he'd once been humiliated, where his truth had detonated across the nation. A rookie officer at the front desk looked up, eyes widening slightly. "Marshal Hale." Marcus gave a short nod. I studied your case at the academy." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You mean Reynolds' case?" The rookie hesitated. "They call it your case. The one that changed protocol." Marcus said nothing. The kid meant well, but that phrase, changed protocol, reduced too much blood and noise to policy. He moved past, up the same hallway where it all began. The walls were new, the floors waxed, but the air still carried memory. In the briefing room, Claire Jennings stood at the podium, mid-speech. "Accountability isn't just enforcement, it's visibility. The camera doesn't replace conscience." She saw Marcus through the crowd and paused. "Looks like we have a visitor." The room turned, recruits straightened in their seats. Marcus raised a hand slightly. "Don't stop on my account." Claire smiled faintly. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing systemic integrity." He exhaled, stepped forward, and leaned against the table. "You all want to serve the law," he said. "Good, but serving the law means questioning who writes it. Don't mistake obedience for honor." A few scribbled notes, a few held their breath. He looked at them, young, determined, untested. "You'll face moments where doing right costs you everything, and you'll have to decide whether your badge is a shield or a mirror." Silence. Claire spoke softly. "That's why we study him, not because he exposed corruption, but because he survived it." Marcus met her gaze, barely. After the lecture, they walked outside together. The air smelled of spring rain. "You still speak like a man running," Claire said. "I stopped running. I just walk in longer circles." She smiled. "You know they named the policy after you. The hall directive officers are now required to log every stop with full justification. Body cam, activation mandatory before approach." He shrugged. "Paper rules. It's more than that, she said. It's proof the system can learn. Marcus looked at her. Systems don't learn. People do, and people forget, she countered. That's why we write it down. Later that week, Marcus visited a community school in the old district. The gym was packed. Students, teachers, neighbors. A mural covered one wall, a badge divided in half. Light on one side, shadow on the other, with the words, "Justice begins with truth." He stopped in front of it. A teacher approached. "We painted that last year. The kids studied your story. They wanted something real." Marcus's voice was quiet. "Real hurts." "Yeah," she said, "but it's also remembered." He turned and saw the same boy from years ago, older now, taller, standing near the back with a badge-shaped pin on his shirt. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed. The boy stepped forward. "You're him, right?" Marcus nodded once. The boy smiled shyly. "I joined the cadet program. Gonna be a marshal someday." Marcus looked at the pin, then at the boy's steady eyes. "Then make sure the uniform never owns you." "I won't," the boy said. "Promise?" Marcus held his gaze a second longer, then nodded. "Good." That night, he drove home under a soft rain. The city lights blurred on the windshield. The same streets, but not the same place. He parked near the river, where the skyline glowed dimly across the water. From his coat pocket, he pulled a small object, the badge the boy had once found years ago. It had been returned to him quietly, mailed without a note. He ran his thumb across the engraved letters. The edges were worn now, dulled from time. He placed it on the railing and watched it catch the light, a reflection trembling in the dark water below. Behind him, distant sirens rose and fell, not warnings, just the city breathing. Marcus whispered, "Legacy isn't what they remember, it's what they keep." He turned, walking away, leaving the badge where it rested, a relic of a war fought in silence, and a promise that justice, once spoken, would not go quiet again. Weeks later, the camera from a passing journalist caught an image, a lone badge gleaming under the dawn sun, still on that railing. The photo went viral. Caption: "For those who fought unseen." No one knew who left it there, but somewhere far from the city, in a quiet office of a federal task force, Marshal Marcus Hale read the headline, closed his laptop, and smiled once. Small, tired, but true. Then he went back to work, because legacies weren't built in endings, they were built in continuance.